classic Seattle. And in classic Seattle style, how are you, my man?
Oh my God, it's Dan.
How are you?
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, mate. Good to see you. Good to see you got a drink there.
Well, yeah. Step into my office.
Right, man, I'm just going to ask you a few questions if that's all right.
Oh my God. And I thought we were after hours and all that.
Yeah,
all right.
It's not after hours, man. It's work day.
It's work never ends. But that's all right.
Well, thanks for meeting me in beautiful Seattle.
Yes.
And how long have you called Seattle home?
Gosh, we moved 17 years ago is when we moved here.
What's your top tip for anyone coming to Seattle?
Do not, and I mean do not, bring an umbrella. You will look like a rube.
That is true. What brought you to the States from your homeland of Canada?
In a nutshell, family and a job.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I wish it were an interesting story. It's not.
Yeah. You've recently joined WEBCON as the Chief Evangelist and VP.
Yes.
Tell us about your role.
Well, part of the time I am the global chief evangelist for the company, representing not just what we do, but what we care about, the outside world.
Yep.
The rest of the time I am building up the North American business, the brand new North American business of a company that's been very successful over in Europe.
Yeah. So give me your elevator pitch for WEBCON.
Oh, that's easy. WEBCON is workflow and business process automation, and better than everyone else. No, in all seriousness, WEBCON is the business process solution for SharePoint customers that really puts the process first. A lot of the time you actually start with data and then maybe make forms for it and then tack on some logic. We actually say, build the process, tell us what data you need, and then we'll build forms that make sense for what it is you wanted to do with it.
Right.
And the key is you can change anything at any time and it takes effect immediately, even with the stuff that's already running.
Yeah. So WEBCON were founded in Poland. Have you been to the HQ already?
I have. It's in Krakow, and Krakow is awesome.
How large is the global WEBCON team now?
We're about 120 right now and growing.
WEBCON are known for business process automation.
Yes.
Why is this a passion of yours?
Because business process problems are so much more interesting than posting a transaction style problems, and involve every facet of the organization. So you have to be a psychologist and a technologist in order to solve those suckers.
What was the earliest tech you used to automate something?
Wow. The first time I attempted to build a workflow solution, it would have been on Microsoft Exchange, which used to have a workflow product inside of it.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
I remember doing something very similar back in Domino. So what are some of the exciting projects you're working on right now?
Well, the most exciting project is obviously bringing WEBCON to North America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the top process you see companies automating with WEBCON?
There isn't one. Everybody uses business process automation for something.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain common things. There are document reviews. There are cases that have to be managed in medical and legal settings. There are employee onboarding challenges and manufacturing quality assurance cases and so on, but it's all over the map.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the biggest challenges organizations face when they try to automate those old manual processes?
Deciding what those processes are in the first place. It's harder than you think. Everybody has a view of what it's supposed to be, and all those different views are in disagreement. So rallying people to come up with what it is, actually the thing I think you should do, listen to everybody, build something that's incredibly imperfect, and let them criticize you. And if you're willing to look dumb for 3 minutes, you can look like a genius for 3 years.
Yeah.
And obviously WEBCON, because we're easy to make changes to, we're good at that.
Yeah. For companies wanting to automate processes on SharePoint or Office 365, what should they go to learn to, what should they go to learn about the tools that are out there?
To learn about the tools, it's quite easy. Go to everybody's website. Go to webcon.com, go to the Flow site in Microsoft.com. K2.com, Nintex.com, Firestart.com. Finding the tools, that's easy. Finding out how to do workflow well, that's hard.
Yeah.
And not too many people are talking about the practice of workflow and automation. I'm doing my part, so medium.com/@MikeFitz.
You held the role of lead evangelist at Microsoft when SharePoint came.
Oh, right.
When new SharePoint came to be.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Wow, what can I tell you? We knew we had a very clever piece of technology on our hands, and we knew it had an extensibility story. But we were living in Office as a little skunkworks project, and getting the people that cared about Word and Outlook and things like that didn't care about us. The server people, we were a little small for that. So the real challenge was to literally knock on doors and get IT pros and developers to pay attention. It was a lot of manual sweat and blood.
And what's your fondest memory of those times?
My fondest memory of those times, would have been the very first SharePoint conference. It was in 2003. It was put on by myself and a guy named Joel Frauenheim, and 200 people attended, mostly ISVs, but each of those 200 people built something with SharePoint, and it was amazing. It started a movement.
Yeah, nice. And did you get to work with Bill at all?
Yeah, actually I did. Bill spoke at one of our conferences and did a great keynote, and I got to meet him backstage.
Any mentors you'd like to give a shout out to?
Wow, too many to count, but I will pick one. Not so much because she influenced me the most, but she taught me one thing that mattered the most. Catherine Morris, who did a lot of jobs at Microsoft, but when I was at Microsoft Consulting Services in Colorado, I learned from her how to align people's self-interest with what the organization needed, sometimes adapting each to accommodate the other, but she was really good at that.
Great, good. How would you describe the earliest version of SharePoint?
An excellent piece of promising technology with a lot of work ahead. Basically, too useful to ignore, too imperfect not to need a community to support it.
Right. And I guess, does SharePoint hold that special place in the heart for you?
Of course. Still does, always will.
What do you think is the most significant improvement that's happened to SharePoint platform?
The cloud, Office 365, and because there are now no longer any, you don't have to worry about how to deploy it anymore or how to properly maintain it. You still need to worry about how to properly govern it and plan for it and get some value out of it, but you'd be surprised how many, no, you would not be surprised,
No.
but you might be surprised just how many people have trouble deploying and installing the darn thing.
Yeah. You're a well-known speaker in the SharePoint and Office 365
Thank you very
community. Do you remember your first gig?
Well, my first gig would have been teaching in university, or do you mean my first SharePoint gig?
Well, let's just say your first public speaking gig, not lecturing.
Gosh. How about, all right, fine. Back in 2001, I taught one of the founders of Hyperfish how to deploy SharePoint, and that was in a public speaking gig in Singapore. I had done it a week before in Cannes, France, but again, we don't have a connection between us for that one.
No. What's your next conference on the speaking calendar?
SharePoint Fest, Seattle in August.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, I'm taking the summer off for the most part and working on a whole bunch of other things.
You're also the VP for content for the European Collaboration Summit.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, I've worked with Otis Hugo and been a friend of his for years. Otis is one of several clever people, Tony Francola, Nanad, Spence Harbor. They've all been involved in that conference for a long time. And I got asked to help be an ambassador for the conference and own the business productivity track several years ago. And it's a formula that we've used off and on for the past year or so. I've had a larger advisor role, like figuring out what the stream of keynote speakers would be this past year. I had a huge role in that.
Yeah, yeah. What makes the European Collab Summit different from the other Microsoft technology conferences?
It's 100% community driven. That would be one thing. And the second thing would be the degree of curation is much higher. It's not just a committee saying we like your session, we like your session, we like your session. It's we like these sessions, now how can we put them together to tell a continuous story?
Right.
There actually are people at the top of the stack trying to paint a canvas out of various submissions.
Right. What was your highlight from this year's conference?
The same as every year, the opening keynote. And that is because all the work has finally reached fruition and the darn thing has started. I cannot tell you what kind of a relief that is, even though we're still not done.
Now, I hear the 2020 dates are live.
Yes.
When and where is that happening?
It's once again in Wiesbaden, Germany, from June 6th through June 8th through 10th.
Right. And speaking submissions are already live?
Yeah.
What content are you looking for?
We are looking, I'll tell you what we're not looking for. We are not looking for, here's this feature, here's that feature, here's this technology. Which is why if you submit right now, you don't have to worry about somebody introducing something in between now and next June. What we care about a lot is, here's something I learned to do that I really want to share with all of you. Or, here is how to use one particular technology in order to achieve business goals or strategic goals or something like that. It is absolutely about getting value out of tech, not about describing technology.
Now, would you say getting that content is the hardest role of being the VP of content, or is there something else?
No, the hardest role is keeping the senior vice president of content and conference program, which is Spencer Harbar, happy.
You're known for speaking in a kilt sometimes. So
Sometimes, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
How did that come about?
As an act of defiance, actually. I've actually had kilts for years. Yes, I have more than one. In fact, I have several. But that happened when I was at Microsoft. We already talked about SharePoint being a little skunkworks project, kind of like a startup. We used to do our own marketing and do all kinds of outrageous things. That's not where the kilt comes from. The kilt comes from Office finally noticing us. We'd gotten just big enough for the Office central marketing people to care. So they kind of reined us in and said, from now on, you don't get your own booth at conferences. You become part of the Office Pavilion. You get a stand there. And you don't get to have your own crazy, loud SharePoint shirts. You're going to wear the Office official event shirt. And that's always worn with either black slacks or skirts. And I said, okay. So I wore a black skirt, a kilt. And if anyone had complained, I would have gone to HR because I am ethnically Irish and Scottish, and it's okay. No one ever complained. Microsoft was totally cool about it. The Office guys giggled. And question number one was, what's the deal with the dude in the kilt? But question number two was always, what's SharePoint?
Yeah.
It was great, and then people expected me to do it.
Yeah.
So for years, at multiple companies, I've continued to wear kilts.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I saw you without a kilt about a year or so ago, and it was kind of weird.
Yeah, and it's weird to have somebody come up to you and say, it's so weird to see you wearing trousers.
Exactly. So fair to say that the kilt doesn't align with the Fitzmaurice clan. It's more of a utility belt.
Oh yeah, it's definitely more of a utility belt. And I'm much more Irish than I am Scottish. Scottish is about a drop. But Irish people have been known to wear kilts for ceremonial things, but they tend to be more plain and single colored, which is what I do. Yep. It's not really about clans in Ireland.
Yep. Many people in the community know you to be an avid traveler.
Yes.
When did you catch that traveling bug?
I've always loved traveling, but I didn't really get a chance to start doing it until I'd say about 17 years ago, and when I started traveling in earnest and have not stopped. Right. There were a few memorable one-off things, but I was not like regularly packing my bags and going off to crazy places.
Any country that is your absolute favorite?
Well, Canada, obviously. But no, I love many places for many reasons. It's really hard to pick a favorite.
Any idea on how many countries you've left to visit?
Probably at least 50. I mean, what is there, 130 or under the official? No, 160 or something. I've probably been to 100 countries, but I don't keep score. Traveling for me is not about trophies. I just go to unusual places or very usual places and have unusual stories collected. The purpose of life is to collect stories, kids. Always.
Any new countries you'll be visiting this year?
Nowhere new, but I am returning to Czechia for the first time in about 13 years. I'm sure it's changed. I can't wait to look for it. That's going to be at the European SharePoint conference in Prague this December. You should go.
Right. Now, any top travel tips you can share?
There are several. One, travel light as much as you possibly can. It decomplicates your life in so many ways, and almost everything you think you need, they've got there, wherever there is.
Yeah.
Thing number two is keep your eyes open. I mean, sure, I take photos, I write things down, I text, I share things with people on social media, but I don't do it all the time. I'm actually paying attention to what's around me, and I collect better stories for it. The third thing is, and this is possibly the most important thing, do not attempt to order a martini outside of the Anglosphere. If English is not the native language, the odds of them getting it right are very, very, very small. In Germany, if you ask for a martini, you get a glass of vermouth. If you ask for a gin martini in Italy, you get a 50-50. Just don't do it. There are wonderful cocktails you can have in other places. Don't ask for what you like to drink everywhere you go. Unless, of course, that's beer. You'll always find good beer wherever you are.
Yeah, that's fair.
Same thing with wine.
What Office 365 app do you use the most in your daily role?
I hate to say this is kind of mundane, but Outlook, followed very closely by Teams.
What was the most exciting announcement from this year's SharePoint conference for you?
There were lots of announcements, but they were all, to me, evolutionary, not revolutionary.
Yeah.
And so to me, the exciting part was not an announcement. It was, again, the vibe, the culture, the community, people that really wanted to talk not just to Microsoft and not just to sponsors, but to each other.
Yeah. And how do you stay up to date with the latest in Office 365, and what can you share in terms of resources for people so they can stay up to date with the latest Office 365 news?
I try to read a lot. A certain part of 30 minutes a day, I get on and I read blogs, I read announcements, I read some tech news sources that I trust. I find reading is faster for me than watching a lot of videos. Videos work great for some people. For me, I like text.
Now, you mentioned your website a bit earlier.
Yeah.
How do we stay? Is that the best place to stay up to date with your tips and content?
Oh yeah, let's do a plug yet again. Medium.com/@MikeFitz.
And any parting words of wisdom?
What can I tell you? Probably the most important thing is if you adapt WEBCON's philosophy of release, review, revise, repeat, not just to software but to life, you're probably going to have a good and interesting time.
Nice one. All right, thanks, man.
My pleasure, sir.
It's good catching up with you. I'll let you guys keep on with me all day. See ya.
Cheers. Okay. Thank you.